I was watching an old Michael McIntyre DVD over Easter weekend. He declared that following the Olympic Games in 2012, London was the best and most exciting city in the world. He then mused and wondered exactly how long that would last for. Well, we know. It wasn't quite as long as we hoped. But at least once a week for around about 30 minutes on the Anything But Footy podcast, you can revel in those good times once more. It's Anything But Footy, it's the Olympic and Paralympic podcast. I'm Michael.
And I'm John, and you can get in touch anytime. We're on Twitter at AnythingButF, Facebook and Insta. Obviously, you can download us via your usual podcast provider, iTunes, Spotify, etc., and download and share and like us and rate us and all that kind of thing. We're looking forward to plenty going on to talk about, including, of course, as you rightly say, Michael, London being the centre of the sporting world.
London is to host the World Para Swimming Championships. It's been announced recently. The reason behind this is that Malaysia have been stripped of the event for refusing to admit Israeli athletes to come to the championships and compete. This is a reaction to what Kuala Lumpur sees as Israel's poor treatment of Palestinians. The event will be rearranged and hosted by London at the Aquatic Centre now between the 9th and the 15th of September. It all comes about after a joint effort by the Mayor of London, British Swimming and UK Sport. And of course the event is a key Tokyo 2020 qualifier. I just wonder, first of all, before we get on to the ins and outs of hosting this event in London, first of all, whether there will be an impact on the swimmers, because as we know, these highly tuned athletes are preparing or have been preparing for an event that was going to take place in July and August, and I guess they'll now have to refocus and try and get themselves ready for the 9th of September.
Yeah, around 600 swimmers and 60 nations are set to compete in the event. As you say, a qualifier for the 2020 Paralympic Games, which is less than 500 days away now as the clock ticks. And as you say, the clock ticks for these athletes. Yeah, they would have been looking to peak in July, but now, as you rightly say, the 9th to the 15th of September is when they will have to slightly delay their peak. And that must be, as an athlete, frustrating, but you'd rather have a World Championships than not have a World Championships. It was right that they shouldn't go to Malaysia. It was right that they were stripped of it. You know, you can't, if the Malaysian government, as the statement says, couldn't guarantee Israeli para swimmers participating free from discrimination and safely in the championships, then, you know, it was right that these events were moved away. And as London has stepped up to host a major sporting event once again, Catherine Granger, the UK sport chairman, said the UK is now a world leader when it comes to hosting sporting events, and our innovative approach to staging competition combined with our passionate fans will ensure this is a fantastic edition of the World Championships. Those passionate fans were in evidence at the Fed Cup at the London Copperbox over the weekend. Will be there for the World Diving in May. We've talked about the athletics in previous Anything But Footy podcasts as well, coming up with the anniversary games, of course, this summer. And that London Aquatic Centre with that big wave of a ceiling, quite an impressive building, built for 2012, of course, staged that, and back the Paralympic swimmers, the world's best, will be back there this year, and it's great to see. And I think it's interesting as well, Michael, that Channel 4 have confirmed they will be showing the World Para Swimming Championships live this September as the UK's Paralympic broadcaster, but we haven't seen much swimming on the telly in the last few days.
Now, the British Swimming Championships have been held in Glasgow. There's been some fantastic performances. Some of those big names that we already know about, medal winners from Rio, people like Adam Peaty, have been winning medals as expected at the British Swimming Championships. Other names, a man who won 6 medals on the Gold Coast in the Commonwealth Games, including Duncan Scott, also winning 3 gold medals in the British Swimming Championships taking place at Tollcross in Glasgow, but no terrestrial TV coverage. I have to say, congratulations to British Swimming. They've been streaming the coverage. It's been excellent. They've had an experienced commentator in Bob Ballard leading their coverage. They've had Rebecca Adlington providing analysis. But I do think that swimming is going to be a standout sport for Team GB when we get to Tokyo in a little over a year's time. And I do think this was a great opportunity for a broadcaster to pick this event up, You know, we already have spoken at length about what a superstar Adam Peaty is, but you've got people like Duncan Scott, you've got Daniel Jervis, you've got James Guy, Max Litchfield, and then in the women's you've got Alice Thomas, who did really well. You've got Molly Renshaw and others. This was an opportunity over 4 or 5 days in what is, you know, a tidy television package. If you think about it from that point of view, you know what time it's going to start, you know what time it's going to end. You've got lots of finals coming up, one after another. So I think it makes good TV, and I think it was a great opportunity to make stars, or begin to make stars, of some of those people that will be cheering on in the first week of the Tokyo 2020 Games.
Yeah, I think there were some news hits on the local BBC, and various BBC stations were picking it up, obviously with their deal that they've had previously and their support of swimming. But as you say, it was an opportunity maybe for other people to get involved. It was the trials for the World Aquatic Championships, which take place later this year, the end of July in Gwangju in South Korea. And you highlighted some of the big names there, Michael, performing. I thought Adam Peaty, you know, first night, first gold in the 100-metre breaststroke, a winning time of 57.87, and he automatically books his place on the plane. That's how it works. The winner, if they had got the qualification time and won the race, the gold medal, automatically got their way on the plane. The squad will be announced later this week for the rest of the World Championships. But some you've mentioned quite a few names in there, and I think it's worth highlighting a couple of them. Obviously, PT came back the next night to win another gold in the 50-metre breaststroke. But James Wilby, I thought, really caught my eye. You know, we know about Ross Murdoch, obviously competing in the Commonwealth Games in Glasgow 2014 for Scotland, doing it again at the Gold Coast. Obviously went to the Rio Olympics as well. But James Wilby, in that 100 metres breaststroke, won by Adam Peaty on the first night, was just was second in just 0.2 off his lifetime best. But then he came back 3 days later, beat Murdoch and Craig Benson, who had to settle for fourth in that 100 metres to win the 200 metres breaststroke, and he swam a lifetime best, an automatic qualification for the Worlds in 2 minutes 7 seconds .49. And he said, we've got a phenomenal bit of breaststroke depth going on in Britain at the moment. It's really exciting. We're a year and a bit out now from Tokyo, so it is really exciting. And lots of other names I want to mention, but just before I do that, Michael, just on breaststroke, we've obviously always been brilliant at it. Nick Gillingham, Adrian Morehouse, Andy Jameson, I think, as well, were all big breaststroke winners for Great Britain in the pool. Are we the only nation that take it that seriously?
Well, I think obviously success breeds success, and certainly we've seen that, and we've spoken at length about funding programs and things like that. And I think when you get a successful sport, a successful discipline, you then start inspiring other people to take it on. And the great thing about sport, and it's always been a great thing over the years, all sports have always created rivalries. And then when you get 2 people or 3 people who are really at the top of their game, they then drive that sport on to a greater level. So think in tennis, that people like, you know, Roger Federer driving Rafa Nadal on and Novak Djokovic, and then Andy Murray had to step up. You see it in so many sports, don't you? And I think we're seeing that in British swimming at the minute. That men's 200 metres breaststroke final that you talk about, for me, arguably the race of the week. The first time you had 2 Brits going sub 2.08 in the same race. And I think what you've got there is James Wilby and Ross Murdoch driving each other on. You've got Craig Benson, you can't write him off as well. And they will just continue to push and push. And, you know, we know what a technical sport swimming is. So we know that these guys have gone there, they've raced phenomenal times at the meet over the last week, but they do have the World Championships. That's their focus this season, and they will be going away now, and they will be working on those marginal differences. And what I mean by that is that they will have their starts filmed by cameras that give them kind of 200 frames a second, so they can analyse really, really in depth what they can do just to try and shave a little bit more off that time as they head towards the World Championships. And that, of course, is the key landmark for them on that road to the Olympic Games. Yeah,
I want to talk about Duncan Scott in a moment, but sure, you mentioned some of the British swimmers and the women particularly coming to the fore as well. 23-year-old Siobhan Marie O'Connor, of course, won a silver medal at Rio. She's a Commonwealth champion. She took the British 200-metre IM title and qualified for what they're calling a World Championship consideration time, which is obviously not quite a qualification time, but it's pretty close, so we'll consider it. So assume that she'll be on her way. Freya Anderson, the 100-metre freestyle specialist, defended her title for a third time, and again, consideration time for the World Championships. Amy Wilmot, someone I know you know reasonably well, up in the northeast, the women's 400-metre individual medley. She's the Commonwealth champion. She sneaked a World Championship consideration time. Also in that race, it was good to see Hannah Miley getting a bronze as she returns from an ankle injury. Thought about retiring from the sport, but has said that she wants to carry on to go into Tokyo 2020. And Molly Renshaw as well in the women's 200 metres, taking the consideration time as well. So some great performances right across the board from British swimming, as you say. But Duncan Scott, he's someone we met in Rio, and bless him, I mean, he's incredibly young. And he looked like a 12-year-old when we met him and interviewed him after he won one of 5 world and Olympic relay medals that he has won, along with the likes of Adam Peaty and James Guy. He's the Commonwealth 100-metre champion. He's the European 200-metre champion, and he won 3 golds, as you rightly say, a hat-trick of titles, 10 races in 6 days. He broke the British record in the men's 100 metres freestyle, and he touched in 47.87 and admitted the last 25 metres really hurt. A few nights later, he took gold in the 200-metre individual medley, smashing his lifetime best and coming within 0.1 of a British record and automatically qualifying for the Worlds. And then the 200 metres champion from Europe, of course, in that pool, the Tollcross pool in Glasgow. He then stormed the 200 metres, beating former world champion James Guy to secure his 3rd medal and 3rd automatic qualification for South Korea. This guy, Duncan Scott, has the potential to be a big star in the world of Olympics as well as British swimming.
Yeah, I mean, I've been following his progress, as you say, since Rio. Obviously caught up at the Commonwealth Games just over a year ago on the Gold Coast.
Did
where
you?
He had a lot of bling around his neck. A lot of bling. I might tweet that photo of myself and Duncan Scott, because I come up to about his waist, and I think that might be part of his success, because he dives in the pool. He's already half the way up the length of the Olympic-sized swimming pool.
And you look like his father.
Thanks for that. That was the last in the present series of Anything But Footy. Yeah, no, the guy, seriously, I think we've got a real superstar in Adam Peaty, and let's not start writing the obituary on Adam Peaty's career. He's still a young man with much to achieve, but 21-year-old Duncan Scott, I certainly think, has got the potential to become another huge superstar of British swimming. And when you think how bad the sport was from a British point of view just a couple of Olympic cycles ago, and how they struggled to get medals on the podium, it's been a really good turnaround by British swimming, and everyone there on that programme should be congratulated. Swimming, of course, will dominate the first week of the Tokyo 2020 Olympics. The schedule for the Games has been officially released. 33 sports, 339 events. We're actually going to see some football, some softball, some rowing and some archery taking place prior to the opening ceremony. That's on the 24th of July. We've got 11 medals on day 1. And if I was going to take up a sport, I think I would take up the women's 10-metre air rifle, because that is the first medal event. And pretty much you could win your gold medal by the morning of the first day. You couldn't go to the opening ceremony, I presume, but then you could pretty much put your feet up and enjoy everything the village has to offer for 17 days. What a fantastic way to do your Olympics. Win it by lunchtime on the first day.
Well, I'm sure. To be honest, I remember that with London, and I was like, it'd be really important. Who wins the first gold medal? Everyone will be talking about it. I can't remember who won the shooting first gold medal at London 2012 when we covered that, and probably the same for Rio. So, but you're right. It's a great way to start, isn't it? You get up first morning, get a gold medal in your back pocket, and you move on from there. But I think it's interesting about Tokyo, because I was reading, Michael, that when it was last hosted, which was I think 60, I should have done my research on that. That I'm going to Google it while you answer this next point. That it was held in October, and of course this year or next year it's the height of summer, so they're having to start the race walk and the marathon at 6 a.m.
There are some odd times, actually, and some of that obviously is due to that heat. So, for example, the rugby sevens, they're going to play in the morning, then they won't play in the afternoon, and then they'll come back on and play in the evening. Swimming finals, a lot of those, well, they will all be taking place in the morning. The reason for that, of course, is not the heat. The reason for that is US TV audiences. NBC have paid £7.65 billion for TV rights until 2032. So they've demanded swimming finals in the morning in Tokyo. So it will be in prime time in the US as far as TV audiences are concerned. 9 athletics finals also taking place during morning sessions as well. That's been something which has been gradually happening in the world of athletics, because morning sessions traditionally, of course, don't get support. They do when they're in London, and they do when they're in Germany, and maybe when they're in Finland, but not many other countries in the world go out and support morning sessions. So more medal events in morning sessions as well. Some of the new sports: 3x3 basketball, street skateboarding, we've got on day 2. Sport climbing, dates for your diaries, 4th to the 7th of August. Super Saturday, 21 medals up for grabs, and then what they're calling Golden Sunday, 26 medals up for grabs on the middle Sunday. Men's 100 metres, gymnastics and men's tennis. So that could be a good day for Team GB. The athletics actually starts on the 31st of July. You've got a brand new sport, karate, 6th to the 8th of August. 30 medals, the most ever gold medals on one day, will take place on Saturday the 8th of August. And the final event will be the men's water polo final, which will take place just prior to the closing ceremony. And you will spot the winners of the men's water polo final, because I imagine they're the ones that are going to turn up to the closing ceremony in their trunks, still with their towels and dripping wet. Was it 64 for the previous Tokyo Olympic?
I should have gone with my gut. I thought it was, and it was. So 1964 is when they hosted it, but it was later on in the year. But it's interesting. You mentioned the athletics, and we talked about it, the swimming, how difficult it is for the para swimmers to change their peak time. So the morning finals in the athletics, as you rightly say, from July 31st, the long jump, both the men's and women's, the women's 100-metre hurdles, the men's 110-metre hurdles, the 400-metre hurdles for men and women, the shot put finals, men and women. I mean, it is different, isn't it, peaking in the morning than when, most of the athletic stuff happens in the evening. And I think there was a few surprises from some of the athletes on Twitter this week.
Yeah, I just think that athletics and the athletes themselves need to innovate, because, the athletes are the first people to complain when the crowds don't come out. And you and I have been at many events, things like British Championships, where, athletes have moaned that supporters don't come out, there aren't enough people in the stands. And traditionally, of course, morning sessions have been qualification sessions, and they've struggled to sell tickets at world level and Olympic level. You go back to when Moscow hosted the World Championships, they were pretty much deserted, the morning sessions. So the authorities have had to address that, and bringing some finals forward, having some medal moments in the first morning session, that is one of the ways of doing it. If you buy tickets to the Olympic Games and they're not cheap, you want to see a gold medal being won, don't you? I know the huge scramble for tickets around London 2012, everyone wanted to get their hands on tickets. We were happy to literally go and see anything. But on the whole, if you're buying tickets to the Olympic Games, you want to see someone win a gold medal. And if you're going to buy athletics tickets and you're going to sell a lot of athletics tickets because you're putting it in a huge arena and you're putting on morning sessions every day for a whole week between the end of July and when the games close on the 9th of August, then you've got to put something on that attracts people to those morning sessions.
It's a really good point. So if you want to watch those gold medals for those morning events in the athletics, back here it's at 3 o'clock in the morning, and that's the slight issue from our point of view. You mentioned about the Americans moving swimming to the morning, so they get their peak time USA evening session with Tokyo finals in the mornings in Tokyo. That's for the US. We are going to watch these finals at 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock in the morning. So in some ways that might be a good thing, because people are going to be waking up here at breakfast. The average person maybe he won't be getting up in the middle of the night, unlike me or you or whoever is an Olympic fan watching these things live. They'll wake up in the morning and they'll find out, oh, this person was a gold medalist, this person was a bronze, this one just missed out. So actually they might get a bit more coverage because of those finals being that time. And I mentioned about the marathon and the race walk starting at 6 a.m. in Tokyo. That's 10 p.m. here, British summertime. So lots of things. When you get this schedule, have a look at it, start planning it, because it'll come round really quickly. But then you need to add in, well, what time is it here in the UK, British summertime, so I can work out when I can watch it and when the rest of the family have to come in front of the telly. Talking about sharing cash and working out what to do, Notre Dame, obviously, huge, awful fire. I mean, everybody has a memory of Notre Dame from Paris. The IOC have donated some cash to it. Is it that important that it's ready for the Paris 2024 Games?
I think it obviously has been a devastating week for lots of people, and as we've mentioned there, of course, everyone that's ever been to Paris has been and seen this phenomenal building, and social media was full this week, wasn't it, of people posting their own photos from their most recent visit to Paris. Landmarks, I think, do help with the dressing of a city for a game. So, London and the Olympics there wouldn't have been the same without those Olympic rings hanging from Tower Bridge. And I think if a devastating fire had happened at, say, Tower Bridge 4 or 5 years out from the London Games, I think we all would have wanted it to be restored to its former glory, to be one of those landmarks. People come to an Olympic city, they're not just coming for the sport, they're not just coming to watch those morning sessions at athletics, they're not just coming to watch the men's cycling road race, one of the events on day one in Tokyo. They're coming to experience the city, and they're coming to experience a city which is in a very unreal time. And I say that because Olympic Games have a bizarre effect on places. And, places automatically go up 1 or 2 notches on the niceness factor when an Olympic Games or a Paralympic Games is in town. So I think it's important that people that are going to Paris in 2024 see Paris at its very best. And part of that, of course, will be to go and see the restored Notre Dame. Whether it's the place of the IOC to donate such a huge amount of money, and we've talked about the IOC and money recently, 7.65 billion for NBC for Olympic rights. So to give 500,000 euros to the restoration of Notre Dame doesn't seem that huge an amount when you compare it with what the likes of NBC and what Discovery, who have the rights in the UK, are paying to show it. As I said, whether it's the place of the IOC, I'm not sure. I think the IOC should be there to support the athletes, should be there to support athletes making the very best of the 17 days of competition, whether that is by loosening the rules and regulations on some personal advertising, whether that is by bringing in some kind of prize money or reward for athletes, which still doesn't exist. You win an Olympic gold medal, all the glories that come with that, but essentially all you get is a fake gold medal to take home. Yes, you can go and plunder all the sports deals afterwards if you've got the profile, but actually winning an Olympic gold medal does not set you up financially for life. Whether the IOC should be looking at doing that for their athletes, or bringing, more refugee teams or more athletes from parts of the world that maybe can't afford to send athletes to the Games, maybe that is their role. Maybe their role is not to pledge huge amounts of money to restore, the roof of Notre Dame. As devastating and as sad as we all were by the TV pictures this week.
As ever, the voice of reason from Michael. I totally agree. A worthy cause, but relevant to the Olympics, I say give it to the athletes.
Still to come, we'll have a roundup of all the other Olympic sport on Anything But Footy this week, but we have to return, unfortunately, to the subject of doping. 2 very high-profile drugs tests have been in the news recently. Jarrell Miller, the boxer, failed 2 drugs tests, failed a drugs test, and then the adverse finding in the first test, and then the second test. He was due to fight Anthony Joshua in June at Madison Square Garden. He said, "I messed up, I made a bad call, and I'm owning up to it." This is after the adverse finding in the second test, having originally said that he would be vindicated. But from an Olympic point of view, former Olympic champion Asbel Kiprop has been banned for 4 years for doping, tested positive for EPO, which is basically a blood booster. November 2017 was when this test was failed. And there are a couple of bizarre circumstances around this one, because bizarrely he'd been tipped off about this out-of-competition test, and he'd also said that he made a payment to the testers, but the panel said that this had no impact on the test results. He's planning an appeal. He said that his drug sample has been tampered with, and remember, of course, he won his Olympic gold medal having been reallocated that medal because the original winner was subsequently found to have failed a drugs test. But yeah, very murky circumstances around this whole story.
Very strange. The anti-doping panel said the case against the athlete is convincingly made out. And as you rightly said, he won gold after the original gold medalist in 2008 was stripped of his title for drugs. I think the reaction from the British athletes summed it up. We've said what we've thought in episode 6 of Anything But Football. If you ever want to hear what we think about drugs taking in athletics in particular, but sport, Di Green tweeted, "F off Kiprop," which was liked by several of the athletes, including Jess Judd. Another fine mess that the sport, and particularly him, has got himself into.
I think there's obviously an issue here where you've got athletes going away on programs that are out of competition. You know, they are not easy places necessarily for drugs testers to get to, and a lot of the work that they do over the winter months very much hidden from view. And I think that's why the likes of Di Green and Jess Judd and others, you know, finding some of these decisions very hard to swallow. If you're Greg Rutherford, you live in Milton Keynes, you're very easy to go and get for a drugs test because you're just off the M1.
Yeah, you just go to the statue and follow it from there.
If you're Max Whitlock, you just hang around the shopping centre in Hemel Hempstead and just wait for him to walk past. You know, a lot of the athletes are very easy to get to, and we see pictures on social media all the time. So the drugs testers turning up 5-6 o'clock in the morning. You know, they have to log in through this app, and you have to make yourself available for an hour every day. But if you're away somewhere, you know, far from, you know, what we perceive to be, you know, civilization, if you like, if you're away doing your training at altitude or whatever, the drugs testers simply haven't got the resources and the money to come and test you out of competition. And that, I think, has been the huge frustration for athletes in this country, that then these athletes are turning up at the major events and, you know, we haven't seen them all year. And just because we haven't seen them all year doesn't, of course, make them guilty. But there is obviously that feeling, well, where have they been? What have they been doing? You know, whilst I've been getting up at 6 o'clock because I've had the knock on the door to go and wee in a bottle, you know, they've not been bothered for 9 months. And then they come up here and they turn out a fantastic and a brilliant time. So I have sympathy with Di Green, and if you want more on our thoughts, as John says, on Anything But Footy, episode 6, check it out. Let's move. We mentioned obviously the failed drugs test by Jarrell Miller. Let's just move on to another quick bit of boxing news here as we round up a few of the other stories this week. Amir Khan, the former Olympic silver medalist, had to stop a fight against Terence Crawford, the WBO world welterweight champion. He took a low blow. Many people are now urging Amir Khan to retire. He denied that he pulled out of the fight as he was being outclassed. He said he pulled out because he simply couldn't carry on.
What a performance as well from Joanna Konta and Katie Boulter, who wasn't even born last time Great Britain were in the world group level of the Fed Cup. It was an amazing atmosphere at London's Copperbox, the first time that the LTA have put the tennis event there. And Great Britain beat Kazakhstan 3-1 in the tie to reach the world group for next year. Heading into the second day, 1-1 after Boulter had let a lead slip and 3 match points against Yulia Putintseva in the second singles match. But then Konta came back from 4-1 down in the third and deciding set against the same opponent, and Boulter held her nerve to win another 3-setter, and the celebrations continued for Britain and the team. Anne Keothavong, the captain, was in total awe of them and said that she hopes the team, especially Boulter, can kick on from here. She's ranked 86th in the world now and Konta 46th. You just hope that we are seeing some more British spirit ahead of Wimbledon and obviously ahead of Tokyo 2020 next year as well.
And if you ever have to interview Joanna Konta, as I did once, make sure you've got a really good handle on the facts and stats, because she will pick you up on any inaccuracies. Me getting her world ranking, me getting her world ranking and her seeding at that particular event mixed up did not go down too well. In rugby, England Sevens won silver. The women England Sevens won silver in the World Sevens in Japan. They were defeated by Canada in the final.
Great Britain beat Hungary 3-1 in the ice hockey, part of a 3-team warm-up series for next month's World Championships in Slovakia. Paul Swindlehurst, Ben Lake and Brett Pellini all scoring in Milton Keynes.
And good luck to Liam Pitchford, Paul Drinkle and Sam Walker, who are all taking part in the World Table Tennis Championships, which have just started in Budapest.
And Shauna Coxsey has gone one better in the second World Cup event in bouldering. The 26-year-old from Runcorn won silver in Moscow, improving on her bronze at the opening World Cup event in Switzerland. But it was Slovenian's Jana Garnblet who won gold again.
We'd love to hear from you this week, your thoughts on Olympic and Paralympic sport. You can find us on Twitter at Anything But F. You can find our Facebook page. We're on Instagram as well, Anything But Footy, and also on YouTube. And you can always drop us an email anytime, anythingbutf@gmail.com.